We have new things at the end of this episode. We have a FLAWED Gems section, our Savaloy Selection, and one game you should avoid, because it really whiffs. GG to the winner of our free game. Your name is in the top pinned comment. You left a gloriously ordinary comment. It's just not Sunday unless we gather together and try not to add anything new to our backlogs. And thankfully, we've actually got some really nice new titles to talk about. Also, thankfully, you can save yourself 10% over at switchup.gg using code SWITCHUP. You'll get 5% off instantly and then 5% back in coins. What games are on sale this week? Well, let's find out. First up then, we've got Oddworld Soulstorm. Now, if you've never played an Oddworld game, you're essentially going around liberating slaves, and you have this weird mind control power. Sounds a bit like some kind of strange meditation. This one almost has that 2D, 3D blend, and it really was a return to the OG games if you played those back on PlayStation. It didn't get a huge amount of fanfare, I think in part because it's almost too similar to the originals. There were some people that were expecting some innovation, but there are a few little innovations in the gameplay. Performance is okay, there are a couple of stutters here and there, but if you played Abe's Odyssey and Exodus, then I think you'll really enjoy yourself here. It's currently half price. Its OG price as well was ridiculous. It was like 50 quid, so it's now down to 22.49, which is much more reasonable. That sale goes on until July the 11th, and do make sure you've got space for the 11 gigs it's going to take to download. You're looking at around about 25 hours if you want to do everything. Next up, we've got Gunvolt, Chronicles, Luminous, Avenger, either IX2 or 9.2, depending on how you want to read that. This is part of Inti Create's massive sale, and it's a very fast-paced 2D action game. Now, you might wonder why I bought this one and not the first one. Well, I actually picked them both up because the first one's also on sale at 50% off, and they're really fun games. I hadn't played them before. I wasn't a big fan of Gunvolt back in the day, mainly because I was too busy playing Final Fantasy. But yeah, they're really easy to pick up and play. There's some very cool mechanics, and if like me you'd never tried them, then yeah, grab them on this big Inti sale. They're about 1 gig each to download, with the first one being £6.49, that's 50% off until July the 4th, and the second one being £11.99. Then we have Bramble the Mountain King, which is a very Grimm's fairy tale style adventure, where you'll be playing for the first few hours thinking, yeah, this is really lovely. Small little goblin creatures, little pixies where you herd them into a pen, and then someone gets a leg ripped off and you're like, what has just happened? It's very cool. Really, I mean, I've just gone from saying a leg ripped off to very cool. But it is. It's an enjoyable game if you know what's coming. I mean, it's enjoyable regardless, but it's just a bit more shocking. And what's also been nice since it was released is the amount of work the developers have put into it. There is a physical of this as well, if that's, you know, what you're after, and I would say physicals are the way these days. But at the moment, this is 15% off, down to about £21. It has a download size of 5.5 gigs, but yeah, it does get a bit scary. So if you're of the more, I don't know, what would you say? I don't want to say weak. If you don't like scary things, then maybe don't go for this one. That sale goes on until July the 10th. I really enjoyed the first Aragami game. It was very popular back on PC. The Switch version was also pretty decent, and I was hoping for Tenchu Stealth Assassin, the Switch version. It's not quite that, in all honesty. That game was amazing. Like, how have they not made a new one of that? But Aragami 2, in my opinion, is much better than the first title that came out. The reason that I liked it more, well, one, the combat. There are times when you can have proper, almost action sword fights, and that caters for those players that don't want to just creep around all the time. But then there's the co-op mode. You can play this with up to 4 of you, and in co-op, if you've got a good group, it really is amazing. Now, you don't have to have a group. You can play the whole thing in single player, and look, it has its flaws. Consider checking out our full review of it, but it's a definite sales pickup. This one's clocking in at £23.44. That's 33% off. There's a physical of this as well that you can usually find for quite cheap, and that sale goes on until July the 10th. Fashion Police Squad is a brilliant game. This comes from a really small team, and it's absolutely bonkers. I think a good example of that are that your 2 primary weapons are a sewing machine gun and a whip that you can use to whip yourself. To traverse, I should say, not whip yourself. Where did that come from? Although you do have to whip some of the enemies. Each enemy will require a different style of weapon, so the sewing machine gun will work on one, the whip on another one. I think you have to whip the scooter users, so the little annoying e-scooters. You have to whip them before you can do damage to them. You'll encounter various fashion crimes that you have to solve, and then sometimes you have to return colour to the world. It's bonkers, but I really enjoyed it. Now it's its lowest ever price at the moment, down to £11.61. I think there is a certain irony to recommending this one, when in the 90s I had myself a white set of Versace jeans. And they were hand-me-downs as well. And my brother only gave me them because they had a massive ink stain on the pocket, so it looked ridiculous. Ah, caramba. That one's 2.9 gigs. The sale goes on until July the 18th, and it's a very, very fun game. Next up, we've got Alex the Kid in Miracle World DX. Now, I mentioned Alex Kidd in a previous video, and I think a lot of people thought I meant this version. This is the updated version that has the nice new spangly visuals, and you can switch back to the old style. It's 66% off at the moment in the American regions. I don't know if it's the EU as well. You'll have to see from the prices. But that takes it down to $6.79, which is an absolute bargain. It is well worth that price. And again, it's another one that has a really cheap physical. I told you in the last video, my brother created a song about this one. He was not best pleased that I shared that with the world. I said it doesn't matter. No one's ever going to meet him. But yeah, I do love the lick of paint they gave this. You're looking at a 1.2 gigabyte download. If you've never played it, it's essentially just an old school platformer, but in the old school sense that one stage would have you underwater, one would have you flying through the air. Yeah, quality. And then it had these, sorry to carry on, but it had these rock, paper, scissor matches, but there was a trick that you could use to always win them. And I'm not going to tell you what it was. That sale goes on until July the 10th. 7th for the week, then we have the brilliant Trinity Trigger. When I first saw the title, I think like many of you, I thought this was a new Trigger game, essentially, and it's not. It's an action RPG that looks to simplify things and take you back to the 90s, which sounds very much like a new Trigger game. What's very cool about this is you can actually play through the whole thing with friends. So if you've got a couple of extra controllers, you can toss them and it's like drop in, drop out multiplayer. The triggers are essentially weapons, so like they're these godly weapons that were dropped down to Earth, and you have these strange little companion creatures, and you can morph those into the different triggers, so you can change it into a bow, a sword, an axe, and then those different weapons are used to break open new areas, so there'll be a large boulder that you can only smash with the hammer. I had a blast with it because it just felt like not too nostalgic. It was like quick. It had little things in it, quality of life things that you just don't get. Like as you hold the analog stick down to move, it'll gradually go into a sprint so that you don't have to just hold a button down the whole time. Loading was fast. The boss fights, they made sense. You did have to use your party members. The biggest criticism with this one is the AI. Like, it's absolute pony. It's not very good at all. It means that playing with a friend is more preferable. You can still more than overcome solo, because that's what I had to do for the review, and still have a really good time. But yeah, you have to be a little bit more calculated and make sure you've got a load of potions. That sale for Trinity Trigger is definitely in the US regions. It's 20% off and it goes on until July the 6th. Now, if you're after a very, very addictive game, then you might want to consider Railbound. This one's down 25% to $9.74, although I think the sale is going to end very, very shortly in the EU regions. In fact, it may have even ended already for you guys, so apologies for that one. You have to twist the rails around to solve puzzles. There's 150 different puzzles in all, and I absolutely have not played all of them, but it has one of the nicest art styles. Imagine this art style in like a top-down, like an action RPG in this. I think it would look amazing, but it's one that you can just pick up and play. It comes from the same people that created Golf Peaks. I don't know if you've played that, or at least the soundtrack does. And if you're after a little loading game, something to play to help you decide what to play for the long haul, this is a great little pickup. Although again, it's likely that you'll just get hooked and end up playing this all night. It's 253 megabytes. It's developed by Afterburn and published by 7 Levels, and that sale goes all the way until July the 10th, I think, in the US regions. The hidden gem then is going to be Railgrade, but that's the US hidden gem because the EU doesn't have this one on sale, so you might get a little something extra. This is amazing, and I didn't know it had come out till about 3 months ago when I bought it on a whim and thought, it looks really fun, and it's excellent. It kind of reminded me of the old roller coaster tycoon games. Do you remember when you could just twist the rails and make exactly what you want to make? But here, it's very important that you plan where you're going to put things quite carefully, because you'll have to deliver certain resources around these small islands, and they obviously get larger and more complex, but you can like put more engines onto your train to make it faster, and do the same with carriages if you wanted to say carry more water and be more efficient, but that will slow the whole thing down because it'll be way heavier. The whole time you're almost juggling your money, and it is very, very compelling. It's a classic case of where it lets you carry on playing after you've finished all your objectives, or go on to the next stage, and you'll find yourself spending an extra hour just carrying on because it's very fun. Really good game, and yeah, that's the hidden gem for the US region. In the EU, I really think you should check out Forgotten Anne. It's actually, I think, on sale in the US as well at its lowest ever price. It's down to £3.19. That's absolutely crazy money. I went up London today for my daughter's birthday, and for £3.19, I could afford maybe a quarter bottle of water and a few insults from an angry bus driver. But here you can get yourself a lovely little platform adventure adventure. Everything looks hand-drawn, and it has a really nice orchestrated score. Now, the world is filled with what's known as forgotlings, which are everyday objects that are brought to life. Somewhere in there's a quarter bottle of water making its way down the road. You'll need to use what's called anima to solve different puzzles and bring things to life. And also there's a dialogue system as well, where your decisions apparently will make huge consequences on the ending of the game. But I haven't finished the end of this one because it's just sat in my backlog after I've played it, and I think I'm going to rectify that rather shortly. That sale is until July the 13th. That's 80% off, down to £3.19. That then takes us to our lovely Savaloy Selection, the games that we look at that are as cheap as the price of a beautiful Savaloy. I mean, I don't know why it's beautiful. It's not beautiful at all. In fact, it looks grotesque, but it does taste really nice. If you can kind of get your head around the fact that it's mainly made of like trotters and stuff. I'm sure it's not. Stares at camera. The first Savaloy is a game called Writhe, which is a first-person shooter. It's like a survival shooter. You've got this hideous like creatures trying to get to you. It's classic arcade. You can imagine going down to the arcade, sticking a 20p in, and you're trying to get the high score. Now, I recommend this one on a couple of reasons. One, personal, and one, I don't know, because I am. The personal one, it's not really personal to me, but I really felt for the developer. I believe it was a married couple, and like this may have been their first game they released, and they sent codes, and the way they sent codes, normally people are like, you need to try our game. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Like, if you don't play it, you're gonna like wake up, whatever. But these guys were like, here's our game. We didn't do it. It's quite good. You know, we quite like it. We did our best. Give it a go if you want. I just like that. And I played it and I got a bit addicted to it. It was very fun. And for a quid, £1.43, yeah, that's a decent little pickup. The next Savaloy is Clockwork Aquario. This one I had never heard of, honestly, but I was told that it's like a very old arcade game and that this is like the first time it's been brought back in 30 years. And as a slightly older person myself, I thought I would treat myself. And it is like, I don't know, it's like turning the saturation on your eyeballs right up. It's a side-scrolling action game, and it really did make me feel like I was back at Butlins, just cracking 20p's into the machine. Just check out this soundtrack. Then before we have our Avoid, we have our new section, the FLAWED Gem. Now this is interesting because I've previously had this in the Avoid list, but it doesn't really fit that. It fits FLAWED Gem. The reason it's flawed, it's Cloudpunk. It's £4.99. The reason it's flawed is because of the performance on the Switch. The actual game is so good. You play as a new member of the Cloudpunk, or who are essentially like taxi drivers in this neon futuristic city. But there's loads of dodgy decisions, but there's also voice acting for all the characters, and it's just a charming game. So if you can put up with terrible performance, then get it on Switch. If you can't, then it's very cheap elsewhere. And that leaves us then with one game you should avoid, because if you don't, there's a good chance that someone you know and love is going to go onto the eShop. They're going to make the purchase, and there will be some tears that could have been so easily avoided had you told them. And that is Bullet Battle Evolution. Now, if you don't remember, I actually reviewed this one. It looked like it was going to be Battlefield on the Switch, and the only battle being fought was me not throwing my Nintendo Switch out the window. It is so janky. It's an online shooter that's supposed to have cover mechanics. Now, I say supposed to, because half the surfaces don't actually work. You'll run up to something, and you'll be spamming the button, desperately trying to get your character to throw themselves against it, only to have a player run up and karate kick you to death. Yeah, you can do roundhouse kicks. Why wouldn't you be able to? Although when you try and swim, the ragdoll physics go crazy, your arms are flailing everywhere, and you just find yourself questioning life in that moment, thinking of the decisions you've made, the people you've hurt, and wondering if this is some sort of payback from life itself. Do not buy Bullet Battle Evolution, it's terrible. And don't be that person that watches the avoid list and goes, ooh, that looks terrible, now I want to buy it. So that is it for this week. I hope you're having a lovely Sunday evening. And thanks to all of you that left me nice messages on the last video. And as always, if you want to win a game, then leave yourself a normal comment just down there in the section. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!